Okay. Call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, if you'll do a roll call.
Mrs. Farrell.
Here.
Mrs. Frank.
Here.
Mr. Howard is excused or absent. Mr. Engelke.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bolt.
Here.
Mayor Pachota.
Here. Presentations 25-0147. If I can get the Assistant City Manager and Fire Chief Giddens to come up for the presentation on the Hurricane After Action Report.
Thank you, Mayor. Give us a moment. We'll pull the presentation up here. All right. Okay. Good morning. I'm James Clinch, your Assistant City Manager, and I'm joined up here with Fire Chief Frank Giddens. We are glad to be before you today. The last time we were here on this topic was back in November, just about 30 days out from what was the most catastrophic impact we've experienced as a community in recorded history. Now we are before you with a comprehensive and pretty dense report on our after-action performance, successes, and things that we can do better in the future. Before we dive in, I want to just kind of qualify, what this report is and what it isn't. So this is a comprehensive, objective, factual-based review of our staff's performance during the storm. In contrast to what the Citizens Advisory Board is working on right now, which is more of a opinion-based community perception of how the city did during the storms. Also very valuable, but very different. And we want to make sure these two documents stand apart. They're unique, and they each have different purposes. But I hope they will complement each other in the end as we bring these two different documents together. So what we're presenting to you today is what the staff has done. And this is an exercise that we've done many times in the past, as Frank will share with you in a bit. This is standard operating procedure after we have impacts from an event, and it always benefits our performance into the future. In fact, I would argue that actual events and then the after action that comes out of that is the most beneficial to changes and improvement in our performance from an emergency management perspective. So we did this back in 2017 after Hurricane Irma impacted our community, 2022, Hurricane Ian, Hurricane Idalia last year, and then, of course, this year we had Debbie, Helene, and Milton kind of back to back. So not a new exercise for us. However, I will say because of the back-to-back and catastrophic nature of this year's season, this is the most comprehensive after-action we've ever done. And I can say that hands down. The most time and energy and effort went into this that we've ever done before. And that's not, Frank and I, we're not the authors of this document. This was put together by all of the directors throughout the city working together over a period of time to assemble this factual information. So with that, I want to kind of just pass it off to Frank to talk a little bit about what the purpose is, and we'll move in. And I will say this is going to be a brief overview. We're not going to make you sit for another hour and a half like we did last time, but happy to answer questions at the end.
Very good. Thank you, James. First and foremost, I'd like to start by saying, of course, thank you very much to everyone that was involved, and that includes our directors, staff, employees, our city management, as well as our elected officials. This simply does not happen, and it's not as successful as it has been or will ever be without your support. So again, this is our most elaborate, most specific after-action report that we've ever had, and rightfully so. These were two catastrophic events that, and we'll delve into a little farther, that were literally on a short time frame. So for the city to respond and perform the way it did, I have no complaints on my end. So again, the after-action report helps us to identify our strength and opportunities for improvement, and that's exactly what you'll see here. So with no further ado, we'll start with the, better? Thank you. How's that? Much better, okay. There you go. Thank you. So we'll start with the purpose, and for the sake of time, I won't necessarily read each bullet point. Again, we went through this in our first presentation, but as you're reading, I'll just kind of touch on some key points. So with our first one, again, as James mentioned, this is factual evaluation of the City of Venice's emergency response. So this is not opinion-based on public perception. This is specifically based on accurate data that we receive. And you'll see, even just in every slide, these pictures are from our own backyard. These are not from other areas. This is from the City of Venice, which makes it more realistic. And it helps add value to where we go from here. So these operations are dictated by our comprehensive emergency management plan, and the after-action report. Again, it'll identify successes and challenges, and again, opportunities that we are able to perform and have performed since even meeting with you in November. I can tell you in the 23 years that I've been with the City of Venice, through the fire department as well as emergency management, I've never read or heard of an after-action report that simply just says, nailed it. So this is no different. This gives us the opportunity. So keep in mind, this report is to help us as a city gain in our operational efforts and efficiencies. So if you'll slip to the next slide, our methodology, and I'll turn this back over to James.
Oh, thanks, Frank. So, as we said, we did a little bit more comprehensive process, and so just want to give you the background on how we got this report assembled. So it was a 3-phase approach. We started with data collection, and that was where every department in the city, including assistant directors and directors, got together, and they gave us their own after-action report on what happened well before, during, and after the storm, and then what are some opportunities for improvement that they experienced during these events. Second phase was organizing all of that immense amount of data into observations, which are kind of your key points, key takeaways from the storms, and then formulating the recommendations so that we can improve into the future. And then that was the final phase. Was we had a smaller committee, which was the fire chief, myself, Brianne Lorenz, and our PIO all got together, and we assembled this into the final report. Again, I just want to say that this report could not have happened without their significant input. Hundreds and hundreds of hours went into this, and we just appreciate that. It was truly a group effort. I think some of the directors, didn't appreciate reliving the storms over and over again, but we have to do that in order to improve ourselves. So that's what we did. We had 2 after-action review meetings, one in November and then another one in January. And these were over 2 hours where we all got together, all the directors at the police station, and we went through every component of the storm and, ultimately getting to the point of what we can do better. So that's the methodology that went into this. And we'll go into our review of the hurricane season. And our presentation is going to kind of go through the different sections of the after action. So, there's a lot more information in there, but we'll give you a brief overview of each section.
Okay, so quickly overview of last year's hurricane season. What I can tell you is, based on this data here, Colorado State just put out their predictions, and mine, this is just their predictions for 2025. You'll see 17 named storms this year, 9 hurricanes, and 4 of which could become major. The idea and the perception we want everyone to really understand is it only takes that one storm. And, in 2024, we saw 2 of these storms. And the impact, as you can see, was devastating. The storm surge particularly is something that we've never dealt with, but you can tell that, this is something that we've learned from and will continue to learn from. But these slides and this information is from the Hurricane National Center. So it's something that we base our operations on. What's reassuring is, even from what we saw here in 2024 and our KEMP plan and our COOP plan, this data, it precisely aligns with what we presented back in November. And again, this only solidifies what our city emergency management plan is and what it's based on, and it just helps to justify both the KEMP and our continuity of operations. This slide, what I really want to bring attention to is the time frame. So we start, obviously with Hurricane Milton, a Cat 5, 100-mile-an-hour winds. The storm surge again was none like we've ever seen, and the time frame in which we dealt with Milton and then Helene on its heels was just a phenomenal feat by the city. So again, I can't say enough for our directors, the city employees, and what they did in the amount of time that they were given. It's just very phenomenal. And this graph alone just depicts the storm surge in particular. And again, not to just reiterate on what we saw, but what we can anticipate moving forward, and that's just at 6 and 7 foot storm surge.
And I'll just add to that, Frank, it was encouraging to us. We presented to you in November with really preliminary data. We were 30 days out from the storm, and we told you, here's why these areas flooded, here's why Flamingo flooded, Tarpon Center, the mobile home parks. We felt pretty confident in those numbers. National Hurricane Center has now issued their reports on both of the storms, and that's what these graphics are from. And the surge levels align almost perfectly with what we presented you in November, which gives us great confidence. We know exactly why these areas flooded. There's still questions in the community, and that's okay, but we feel very confident in the data now based on not just our own observations, but these national federal agencies. And then I'll just highlight again, this statistic at the bottom of the slide is pretty dramatic. This last hurricane season was the shortest time on record between major hurricane landfalls in Florida history. And I think that's significant for a couple of reasons. We experienced the impacts of both of those storms for the first time ever in Florida history. And as we think about future risk, I completely agree with the chief. We will see a storm impact again. Will we see back-to-back storms like this again? Less likely, maybe. But it was really an unprecedented occurrence to have a back-to-back major landfall within 2 weeks in the same location, impacts in the same location.
Okay, for emergency operations overview. So again, this is something that starts well before a storm approaches. You're very much aware of that, but our city Kemp plan has its pre, during, and post-storm activations. Obviously, in the beginning is when our emergency management plan is activated along with our emergency operations center. And as we're all aware, again, this starts well before the storm is off our coast. And what we're doing at that time too, again, is working with our jurisdictions, our municipalities. Cannot say enough about Sarasota County and their EOC and the communications that we have. And then again, the FEMA supported response. That's all well and greatly needed. But in the end, it's really, we're just self-reliant upon our own self and our own city, and again, it does so well with it. The emergency declaration, that is done, again in advance, and it's just a reiteration that all staff is considered essential, and that again includes our elected officials, our department directors, the city employees who dutifully, I think that's a word, but they respond with no hesitation, and it's sometimes we fail to remember that they're also, they have families, they have homes that they're literally abandoning just to come here to make sure that the city works as well as it does. So that's part of our emergency operations review in the beginnings.
Our next section is the after-action successes, and this is towards the front of the document, which I think is important and was intentional. One of the things we noticed and kind of became apparent as we're putting this report together, we've got a lot of room for improvement. There's 43 recommendations that we're going to be talking about, but it's really important that the improvements and the challenges and some of the more negative things that we can improve upon don't overshadow the significant successes that came out of this event. I would say overall, the city performed better than ever in terms of storm response. Which I think is a fair way of evaluating ourselves. How do we perform compared to past events? We also performed very well when compared to any of our neighboring jurisdictions, and I think that's also a really fair metric to look at. How did we do collecting debris, responding, compared to some of our neighbors? And we did very, very well, and those are highlighted further in the report. and I'll let Frank kind of go through just an overview of those successes.
Sure. Thank you, James. So again, this is nothing new, but just to reiterate, some of the success we have before the storm is really built on the after-action report, even the season before. So that's something that we're constantly looking at. But to highlight some of the things that we really did that I think it's worth recognizing is particularly our sandbag stations. Can't say enough about Public Works and their dedication to filling these sandbags. That is a huge undertaking, and the amount of sand that was filled is just astronomical. The Everbridge alerts by our PIO, that again, communications is always going to be something that we're always going to have to work on, and it'll always be ever improving. But the fact that the two in particular staff members, Brianne and Lorraine, that made it such an effort to communicate both pre, during, and post-storm was a phenomenal feat on our end. So, success, again, just to continue on, success during the storm. The EOC, that's something that's, it's a vital part of our operations. And again, every year it continues to get better and better. Identifying our critical facilities, including our water plant and fire station, and without going too far into it, that we all know those are problems that we've identified, and that's something that's going to take time, mind you, but it's something that we want to improve on. Our public outreach and communication, again, is just, it's always going to continue to get better as technology advances. And then again, success after the storm. This is something too, again, these pictures are taken from our backyard. These are our crew members, both police and fire, with citizens within Venice. So every department has a recovery role, and that's something that, it doesn't work without training and practice, and they're all very dedicated to what they do. Utility restoration, the simple, the sewer and the utilities has to always be upkept. The citywide damage assessment, again, with Derek and his team, this is something that just can't happen overnight. So I know it sounds like a broken record, but I just can't say thank you enough to them and what they've done and the continued work that they're doing. So recovery assistance, really, it's just based on how well is our KEMP plan. And it just, again, solidifies that, it is a solid plan, and there's always going to be, again, ideas that we need to work on. We understand the low-lying areas and those issues, and that's something that the city's already implementing, so.
Great, and you'll notice in the after action, there's quite a bit of metrics and numbers, and we really work to pull together some quantifiable data because it helps portray what we did this time around, but it's going to be useful the next time that we experience a storm because we can look back and see how we compared. But some significant numbers that are in here: over 50 high water rescues were conducted and 2 structure fires managed by our public safety teams. 39 resource requests through the county EOC. So these are specific requests that exceeded our capacity, things we needed from either the county or the state of Florida. 39 different items submitted. 106,930 cubic yards of storm debris removed in only 52 days. That's significant. That's extremely fast. Typically it's 90 days or more, but we had great success once the resources arrived to get that debris picked up very rapidly. From a public information standpoint, we sent out 14 emergency calls, so that's your reverse 911, Everbridge calls, 720 Facebook posts with over 3 million views, 200 updates on our city website, and 50 TV, print, and radio interviews. And that's all with one PIO and a backup PIO. Pretty impressive. We had 60 wastewater pump stations without power, completely shut down after the storm, that were restored within hours, thanks to our talented utilities teams out there in the field. 14,500 properties inspected for damage. Those are private properties, visited by our staff members after the storm, following weeks, assessed, and they were given information to help them with the recovery process. Here's how you can start that recovery process. That's probably more than half of the structures within the city of Venice. And likely our most probably our proudest statistic here is no hurricane-related fatalities in our community and 0 city staff injuries. So we're very happy to report that.
Some of the key observations. So obviously it's the coordination of enhanced response and recovery efforts. Emergency policies and procedures were well implemented. The public communication, again, effectively informed residents. This is something that we also want to continue to build on. And, especially, being aware of your evacuation levels and when and the timeliness of evacuating. Again, we're aware of low evacuation compliance, and that's something that, again, the city is continually to work on. Damage assessments highlighted vulnerabilities on our coastal zones, and again, moving forward, some of the permitting and flood regulations, these are crucial, just to protect against life and property, and they're just as important to ensure, the eligibility for flood insurance. The city facilities performed well. Again, we already, understand the idea of moving Fire Station 2 and relocating the water plant. That's going to help just to continue to strengthen our plans. And understand, our city staffing levels are strained due to back-to-back hurricanes. This is something that we can only control Mother Nature as much as we can, which is very little, but it's our job to prepare, and I think our city staffing did very well and exceeded expectations, and that's something that, we want to continue to thank them for their dedication. Contractors and vendor services, this was critical for just getting us back to a recovery state, and that's something that we'll continue to work on and try to enhance those services and agreements and keep those in place. Let's see, one of the other ones, we have utility restoration faced delays, but again, your utilities were working in, shin to knee-deep water. So that's something that to overcome those kind of challenges is just phenomenal. Debris management, it's very effective, constrained again by resource availability. Understand that, just because we, sustain certain impacts, we're still competing for resources and outside resources. And in an effort to, smooth that over, we're always trying to put those types of requests in early, if you will, and secure those agreements. And nonprofit and volunteers, they play a big role, and we've been very successful with them. We want to continue to build on that. FEMA compliance, tracking, reporting, the 214 forms that we continue to fill out, they are truly a nightmare, but thankfully with our clerical help, it keeps us in line, so that's something that we're always going to continue to try to improve on.
All right, and the final section in the after action is really the meat and potatoes, is our recommendations that came out of this process. Like I said, 43 recommendations. They apply to multiple different departments. Our next step for Frank and I as we're moving forward is the implementation plan, which we'll be following up with departments on that after this meeting. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but they fall into some general categories. So we've got, adjustments or improvements to policies and procedures based on lessons learned, strengthening our intergovernmental and public communication, a lot of recommendations on that front. The infrastructure, of course, we saw the weaknesses in our city infrastructure with our water plant having to go out of service and Fire Station 2 having to be evacuated, and then, of course, the T-hangars at the airport that suffered significant damage again. Resource and logistics management, several recommendations there. And then enhanced recovery. We recognize that our staff were strained in a lot of areas, and that actually ties into the public perception piece quite significantly. We know there were delays in the building department, there were delays that were experienced, and frustration, when folks are impacted, and then you also have to wait for things to get processed. I mean, that's very, very frustrating. So we've got a lot in there that addresses kind of the operational efficiency after a storm. Debris management, same story. There are things that can be done to improve there. And then the final item is staffing and support, and that really covers a lot of ground, but training, flexing in contract services as needed, and then leaning on the private sector to help us when we're overwhelmed as a smaller city during these events. There's a section in there just kind of summarizing our financial impacts, and this is really as of today. It's still, in flux to some degree, but we're looking at right around $14 million worth of impact to the city from both of the storms. The largest category, of course, is debris, which is why that's one that is so important that we follow the FEMA regulations to the T, so that hopefully we'll get the majority of that money returned to us. Impacts to parks, 4.3 million, and then impacts to city buildings and equipment, about 2.8 million. So of course, we're heavily into that FEMA reimbursement process, but it's still really at the very beginning. It'll be, potentially over 2 years before we see that funding returned to us. So in conclusion, we had what was certainly the widest and greatest impact the city of Venice has ever received in history from these 2 storm events. As I talked about comparisons, we did outperform by all of the metrics from previous storm events, which is fantastic, and that's only because of our support team in this community. The goal of this report and where we'll be taking it from here is improvement. So that's the next step, is implementation and improvement. In terms of timing for these recommendations, some of them are already done, some of them are in process right now, and some of them may take several years. So they're on different time frames because they're all have a little bit different scope. But that is our intent. We'll continue to pursue these infrastructure projects, resiliency projects, grants, because infrastructure vulnerability is one of the biggest issues we're going to be dealing with for the next decade. And finally, want to make a plug for our Hurricane Expo, which is coming up on May 30th at the Venice Community Center. So one of the biggest public communication issues, which is in the report, has to do with expectations and kind of understanding about what happens during a hurricane. And that was a little bit surprising. I think maybe we're a bit jaded as staff and people who grew up in Florida. I remember having school off and you're at home playing board games with candles lit, and it was just no big deal. That was what you did during a hurricane. Our community now has a lot of new people that haven't experienced hurricanes before, and we're actually shocked. What do you mean my power is going to be out for several days? I won't have internet for several days. This debris pile is not going to get picked up in a couple of days? No, that's not how it works. And so we're going to do our best at the Hurricane Expo to really be honest and in plain English share what you should expect during a storm impact, because it impacts their decision making, right? If some people say, I would have evacuated if I'd have known, that I would have had these inconveniences. So we want to make sure people know that. Lorraine Anderson, our PIO, has secured a videographer. So when our staff are going to be speaking at this event, and we're going to have several staff from all the key departments speaking, we'll be videoing those presentations, making them available to anyone who couldn't attend, or in the future, they'll stay fresh for several years. So we really want to make sure we get that information as widespread as possible. And then the last thing I'll say is the Citizens Advisory Board is actively working on their after-action report. We are here to assist them to the degree that they would like assistance. I mean, this is their product as well, so I don't want to infringe on that. But we also want to be there to assist them with any questions they have along the way. So with that, I'll pass off to Frank for any closing remarks.
I think you covered it. Again, this is something that we'll continue to build on. The Hurricane Expo is going to be really like none other that we've had, in that we can specifically bring in directors to consult and communicate with our residents. We've heard their voice, and this is something that we want to keep working on, and it's going to get better every year. So again, thank you for everything you do.
Okay. Thank you, Frank. We'll open it for any questions you have at this time.
Ms. Fair?
Actually, it was, you've done well. Thank you very much. I was at ground zero, so I'm a little more in the game than some people are. And I've been getting requests from actually neighbors, and they're very concerned with flood barriers. And it's kind of my observation reading around is that we ought to get out of the sandbag business. It's a hassle for the city. Residents get into fights. I'm constantly being yelled at by residents. I didn't get enough sandbags, up the limit. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Sandbags aren't that effective. I'm really hoping that someone in procurement will take up the banner and actually do a kind of a search of different things that consumers can buy. And I know some people have critiqued this and said, well, no, the city shouldn't do that. The consumer should do that. But you can imagine that a consumer is not really in a good position to spend maybe $1,000. Oh, well, let's try this one. Let's bring this to the house, test that out. You know, but I think that the city could spend a small amount of money and get several different of these sandless sandbag ideas. One of them I saw on a website called Vivor was 12 feet long, 12 inches tall, and made out of what it looked like the things that firefighters' coats are made out of, that thick vinyl, not like a beach ball, you know. And at half full, it holds 1,350 pounds of water, so it's water fighting water. That's just some ideas. Other people, I'm trying to get hold of a pamphlet one of the neighbors had. It's some kind of accordion thing made out of metal, and supposedly it was expensive. But if you pay $500 or $1,000 and you're going to have $10,000 worth of damage to your house, you know, maybe it's worth it. Plus, it's reusable. And we all know the wonderful success of that hospital up in Tampa that really didn't even get water. I mean, rain didn't even come through it, supposedly. So, and I'm going to go out and visit Javier Vargas at the water treatment plant. Evidently, they have some kind of barrier. Now, that might be way too expensive, but you know, I'm just in my infancy, and really, I think I shouldn't be the one really doing this. I think, like procurement, somebody who knows what they're doing and maybe has some staff. And then the other thing I did want to mention, I think we need to purchase. Evidently, there was a shower trailer after the hurricane for a brief time at the American Legion, but I went down to Englewood where there's a community, they call themselves a Red Cross Resiliency Hub called EPIC, and they have a shower trailer there from 10 until 1 on Mondays, and then it goes to 2 other locations on Tuesday and Thursday, something like that. But the showers are unlimited length. They do provide towels, and there's soap in there too. But they just have two units. It does have a toilet. But the nice thing about the one they have is it can be pulled by a pickup truck, so it's not a biggie. So, but there's all kinds of things. They have the ones that are just toilets, just showers, just washing machines, and every combination and permutation thereof. And what might work here, I don't know. And there's even a company in Tennessee that sells used ones. So there's all kind of options out there, and there's even websites. Who would have known that one of them, I think, is called Wash America. That it's a nonprofit. That's all they do is have these mobile shower things. So I think I've talked long enough, but I wanted to get this out to a lot of people, and I've been visiting around to different of the departments and stuff. So thank you so much.
Mr. Engelke?
Gentlemen, thank you for a very, very thorough report. 2 compliments here. One on the report, and second, the compliments on the speed and execution of our recovery. I had people coming down, seasonal people, say, we had a hurricane here? We had 2 hurricanes here? Wow, it doesn't look like it. I go, the city has worked really, really hard to get us going. And on a very macro basis, for my perspective, wow, you kept us out of the newspaper. Yeah, there's always going to be a few people complaining, but those are isolated incidents. You look at some of our neighboring communities, they're still trying to recover. And this is X number of months later, but we had in December, the end of December, people walking around saying, what hurricane? So I want to compliment the city and the city staff. I wasn't part of this, when the hurricanes came, so I could take no responsibility, but I can certainly say from a citizen's perspective then, and now as a member of council, thank you for your work. It's excellent. Of course, there's going to be some things that we need to work on, but probably communication on the expectations. I do like, you mentioned hurricanes. I think of snow days. Snow days were, no school. Wow. Snow days are over with in 24 hours, and hurricanes recovery is, 24 months. But I want to compliment you guys on your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, both of you, for that report. I appreciate you're saying that the expo will be like never before, because several people observed to me that the expo had turned into more like a home show than an educational opportunity. And of course, Mr. Salinas was here just last week urging us to have a public presentation. It sounds like you're going to do that at this expo, and I appreciate that. Appreciate Councilwoman Farrell's comments about water barriers. And a lot of dissatisfaction was with frustration, maybe understandable, with the sandbagging process. Can you talk just a little bit more about that? Was it just the volume of demand for it, or do we need a better location? Do we need a different way? People are saying you should bag the sand for them, et cetera. I just wonder if you have thoughts on how that process could be improved.
So again, there's always room for improvement, and we always try to dictate that on, again, just as you mentioned, the amount of sandbags that are given out, the amount of sand that is available. And again, with our public works, the plan that they have now, to me, seemed to work very, very well. It was very fluent. It allowed for a large volume, not just the citizens of Venice coming in, but we've got lots of people coming in from out of area. And even still, our public works had an incident action plan in place that allowed for that volume to come in and out. The resources of getting sand, to the best of my knowledge, has not been a problem. What we just have to really embed in people's head is the sandbag purpose is just to dam, dike, and divert. And it's not necessarily going to stop 6 feet of storm surge. So this is something, again, that this is not what we want to rely on to stop the water. More importantly, we want people to realize that you're in a potentially dangerous area for a 6-foot storm surge. You're going to have to stack a lot of sandbags, but better to just evacuate. And again, this is why materialistic things can be replaced as opposed to your life safety. So again, to say that we need a better system, the system is working. It's something that the city, provides. We want to be consistent with our counterparts when they also provide these sandbags. But it's something we can definitely look into each year as we want to improve on it.
If I could add to that, the Citizens Advisory Board is also looking at sandbags, and I'm actually really interested to kind of get their feedback on this, because this is more of a public perception issue, to be honest with you. Every municipality does it different. Yeah, Charlotte County doesn't give out any sandbags. You figure it out. You're on your own. Lee County, they have sand behind the fire stations year-round. You can go get it at your leisure. The county puts sand there, but no bags. So everybody does it a little differently. We provided a higher level of service. We provided sandbags. We were the only ones with sandbags left on the 2 days before Milton. So guess what? Guess where everybody was going? They all came to Seaboard. Did it overwhelm it? Absolutely. It was like a Black Friday sale. Everybody came in. And eventually we ran out of sandbags too. We gave away every single sandbag that we had in our inventory. So that's the nature of sandbags. So I think, as Frank said, was it a success? Yes, we gave away more than we ever gave to our residents and residents of the county, which is great. Can it be improved on? Yes, certainly. Our process next year will likely look different to some degree.
Thank you. Were there any recommendations for any new equipment as a result of this review?
Equipment as far as for sandbagging or for just in general?
I mean, equipment such as in those roll-off dumpsters, the claw
absolutely.
trucks,
water
all the
rescue.
things that people had indicated we might have
Yes, and
wished we had.
that's a great point. So yes, so even part of our CIP for fire specifically, we are asking for an additional high water rescue. Fortunately, each one that we have now, even our brush truck, is donated by forestry. So we're always looking to add equipment. We're also looking to be, stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. As part of the public safety campus, whenever we can relocate Fire Station 2 and we have a police and fire public safety campus, we'll also incorporate our EOC. So what we do then as part of our AR is we're always looking at resources, equipment to help improve ourselves. So much so that we know that we had 50+ water rescues just through these last 2 storms, where we now, and these are some of the lessons learned that we've already implemented, we've already gotten several John boats as part of our fleet to help us with shallow water rescues. So we're always looking to do that, even down to the sandbags. How can we start doing these resource requests now and even implementing them to the state level now instead of waiting for the hurricane? So we're always looking for improvements with equipment.
Also in here, we've got additional Starlinks. Those ended up being a fantastic asset to us after the storm for connectivity, both for our different city facilities. We also opened one to the public at the cultural campus, which was very useful. We've got an additional request for some drones and drone pilot training. Again, that was a technology we didn't have in the past, even during Ian, but was incredibly beneficial to reviewing different buildings and impacted areas and beaches and the jetties. So that's in there. In terms of debris specifically, I'll tell you, we did a pretty thorough review of our process with our Public Works Department. And what you'll see the observations in here, most of them are 1 page. Debris is 2 full pages because it's very complex. There's a lot of information there. And what I would say on debris is there's a lot of different ideas about ways to handle that. But you got to think about it from our perspective, which is citywide. So 106,000 cubic yards of debris. A dumpster holds about 20. So that's over 5,000 dumpsters worth of debris. It just doesn't make sense from a logistics standpoint to try to collect it with dumpsters. And that's not even talking about the fact that we wouldn't get paid back for it if we did it through a different process. So to us, the idea of trying to take over debris management in-house doesn't really make sense financially. It doesn't really make sense logistically. It would take longer and it would cost more because we would be ineligible in a lot of ways for reimbursement. So it's tough to rely on another entity, which is what we're doing for debris for the most part. I mean, we have our own in-house, equipment, but the entities that come in, and you saw them when we're doing debris, it's a unique operation. It's not like anything anybody does around here. They're coming, these are logging trucks that are coming from way out west. They've got special CDL licenses. There are these trucks that can hold like 40 yards of debris in one haul, and they make quick work of it once they get here. And that's truly a challenge. We recognize the resource availability issue in this report, and that was a problem. But we still believe that that is the best method in the future to manage hurricane debris.
Ms. Frank?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that, from where I sit, this 45-page after action report is truly above and beyond. It is an extremely thorough, I'd call it, dissertation of exactly what happened, and you guys didn't just crank out a quick recap. You guys took the time and energy to really dig through all of the details, and I'm so grateful. I wish I could print out thousands of copies and put them in the mailboxes of those property owners or individuals who were impacted by the storm, because they might hear from a neighbor, the city's not doing this, or they might have questions, and I would just point them to this document because it is incredibly insightful to the myriad of ways that you guys are helping residents and truly, as you mentioned, providing a higher quality of service for our city residents than they might receive in other municipalities or counties. So again, I'm grateful, and I was happy to hear my colleague, Mr. Smith, ask about the equipment, and I see the John boat pictured on the cover. That was one of my first questions I asked one of our first responders who was involved in those water rescues. I said, what type of equipment do you wish that you had in order to do what you were tasked with in this incredibly difficult situation? And he mentioned, additional John boats. So thank you for being receptive to that feedback, and thank you for equipping us with the information as policymakers so that we can prioritize effectively. So thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Bolt?
I just want to compliment you on the structure of the report. I really appreciate it. I think that there's been a tremendous amount of work and thought put into it. I look forward to the melding of this with the CAB, Citizens Advisory Board report. I think what we're going to probably see is they're going to deal probably a bit more in infrastructure issues where, certain areas of the city were very, very much affected. But there's a big difference between what you guys did and the infrastructure issues that many of which are underground that we can't fix overnight. But I think this was really well written, really appreciate it, and I know how hard you worked on it, so.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your report.